Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate, and welcome back to yet another weather forecast discussion, this time for February 1st, 2022. Now, we are about to get underway with our massive outbreak of significant weather, which could include massive amounts of ice and snow, as well as flash flooding and even tornadoes that could be possible in some areas. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started by taking a look at the simulated radar here from the North American model. Of course, the time is above me in Eastern because that is where I live. And you can see how from the time frame of this evening into the early morning hours of Tuesday and Wednesday, you can start to see how some of the snow and even freezing rain in portions of the salmon and even purples start to show up across portions of central to eastern Kansas, central to northern Missouri, as well as central to northern Illinois. This is basically where you guys can start to really get your heavy amounts of snowfall and freezing rain right off the bat. And that'll continue to linger on through portions of Topeka, Kansas City, all the way down to Wichita and Springfield, as well as even to portions of St. Louis could continuously get this freezing precipitation all the way through into the afternoon and even evening hours of Wednesday. But then the new low pressure system that we've been talking about in our previous videos begins to start to form. It drags in that cold air that was lingering from the past low pressure system, the Clipper that was moving on through portions of Canada. And because that cold air got brought in behind it, that is the reason why we have all this wintry precipitation out in front and along this polar boundary that sets up from portions of the southern plains all the way through into portions of Canada. Now, at the same time that all this is happening, we still have our upper level low that continues to linger on through into portions of the Great Lakes. That'll continue to bring heavy amounts of snow in portions of northern Indiana and northwestern Ohio, and that'll continue to be the case as this continues to move on through, and even portions of northern Ohio continues to join the fray. But then look at this, from Wednesday into Thursday, Wednesday night into Thursday, notice how the snow and freezing rain comes back and basically connects from portions of northern Texas from the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area all the way through into much of Oklahoma, central to northern portions of Arkansas, Missouri once again, Illinois once again, and that'll meet up with the rest of the wintry precipitation that was continuing to linger on through into the Great Lakes and Ohio River Valley. That'll continue to be the case. It'll move on through and even intensify overnight from Wednesday into Thursday, especially into portions here. If you live from southern Missouri into central portions of Arkansas, along the Mississippi River, and even into portions of the Ohio River, you guys really need to watch out. I mean, Little Rock, Jonesboro, Memphis, all the way up towards Paducah, and even further up towards Louisville, Kentucky, you guys seriously need to watch out for heavy amounts of freezing rain that could potentially be possible. And besides that, even the areas that already got freezing rain to begin with can continue to get more wintry precipitation on top of that, whether that is freezing rain, sleet, or even heavy amounts of snow. This is anticipated to go all the way further into portions of the Northeast, heading on into portions of Ontario and Quebec, and this is expected to continue to linger and hit repetitive areas. I mean, just look at this, guys. This wintry precipitation did not move the entire time I've been talking about this. We'll even zoom it back, and you could just see how all those blues, salmons, and purples continue to stay over the exact same area. And you can even take a look at the timings above me. This storm moves off very slowly to the east, which is the reason why this storm could potentially be very significant for specific areas, especially if some of this general vicinity continues to get heavy amounts of freezing rain on top of what they already had, which can create widespread power outages and very hazardous travel. I mean, the big thing here is that the freezing rain could easily topple trees once you get in upwards to about a half an inch. And if we take a look at the freezing rain totals here, well, I mean, you got some amounts that could be in upwards of about 1.5 inches. I mean, look at this down here at the bottom right-hand corner. You have your maximum, which could basically be about a widespread swath of areas of central Arkansas all the way off into portions of southern Ohio. This entire area could potentially get about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of freezing rain possible. And at the same time period here, from Thursday afternoon into Thursday evening, this is where some severe weather can start to reside over here in portions of Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and even into portions of Tennessee, you can already see how this boundary is starting to lag in behind. And because this new low pressure system is basically creating a bit of a cold front here, as well as your warm front that exists right along the Arctic boundary, this is where severe weather could potentially reside, with the threat of tornadoes being possible. I'm watching for an area here along portions of the border of Mississippi and Alabama, specifically in southern portions of Mississippi and Alabama, well north of Gulfport, of course, but still right within the general vicinity to where there could potentially be a sweet spot for tornadoes. So we're going to have to continue to watch out for how that continues to protrude through. But regardless, guys, this is a whole whammy of a system that is basically hitting a home run over much of the areas of the U.S. And you can even see as we go from Thursday into Friday now, the winter storm now starts to move off further into portions of the extreme eastern Ohio River Valley and portions of the Northeast, including areas near eastern Canada, specifically southern Ontario, southern Quebec, heading off towards the New Brunswick areas, and even portions of Nova Scotia. So if you're along that general vicinity, you guys need to continue to watch out for some significant amounts of wintry precipitation. Now, if you stay tuned to the video, we're going to go a little bit more in depth as to how significant some of these wintry precipitation amounts could be within some specific areas, as well as we go in depth as to why this all is happening, so you guys can understand as to why you could potentially see some more significant snow, some more significant freezing rain, or some areas could potentially even get rain. But just taking a look at the freezing rain totals, we already talked about areas along the Ohio River and Mississippi River areas, but as you get further towards the Northeast, you can see how that freezing rain starts to kind of wither away, and some significant totals aren't exactly all too likely, besides maybe some areas in the higher elevations, as well as towards portions near the Hudson River. However, we can take a look at the snowfall totals expected from the Euro model, and that seems to be the opposite of the freezing rain, to where there could be potentially an upwards of a foot to even a foot and a half of snow across portions of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, as well as portions of northern New England, specifically in northern Massachusetts. So we're going to have to watch out for how this continues to move on through. And there is still a little bit of disagreement as to where the potential significant amounts of snow could be. So it could even head a little bit further off to the south, depending upon what model you actually look at. And that is the reason, guys, why the National Weather Service has basically blanketed almost the entire central and eastern, or at least northeastern portions of the United States with winter storm warnings and or watches. I mean, look at this, guys. We have all these lavenders, these pinks, these dark blues over here. All of that is winter storm watches, warnings, or advisories. And we even have some activity up here into northeastern portions of North Dakota and northwestern portions of Minnesota, to where we actually have active blizzard warnings ongoing from that Alberta Clipper. So that just goes to show you how significant some of these storms could potentially be, and how significant that wind shear is as well, to where that could bring some of that cold air down into portions of where this winter storm could potentially be. So if you are in any of these areas, if you see your county in a pink polygon, in a pink color, you need to really watch out for this storm, because this could definitely get significant very quickly, and it's going to be happening over, as I said, multiple days. So we're going to have to continue to watch out, and I would start to prepare for a significant winter storm. And that's the reason, guys, why I want you guys to share this information with as many people as possible, because this storm is going to impact millions of people. There is no doubt about that in my mind. It's pretty much set in stone at this point as to this storm going to be moving on through across the areas that I've mentioned, as well as some of the totals of the wintry precipitation as well. So we need to share this information with as many people as possible, whether you share it with a friend, a family member, a group that you're in on Facebook, whether you have some sort of club activity and you want to share the information there by copying the link of the video and sending it that way, whether you send it on a text message, whatever way we can get this information out. We are going to want to get this information to as many people as possible, and by liking the video, you actually help me on YouTube get this information out to more and more people on this platform, essentially helping me spread the information. So I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that like button down below, and if you are enjoying the content, please be sure to subscribe, as I will continue to update you guys on any sort of significant storms that'll move on through, including winter storms, severe and tornado outbreaks. Those are going to be very common into portions of March and April, I fear, as well as even tropical weather, hurricanes, tropical storms, and stuff like that. You name it, I will be covering it here on the channel. So please be sure to subscribe if you are interested in that type of content. And as I said, this storm is more than likely going to be very significant for some people. Now, in order for us to understand as to why this all is happening, we're going to have to take a look at the current satellite imagery here to see what the general flow of the atmosphere is. Now, I do a little bit better describing as to what exactly is happening in the atmosphere in my video that I uploaded yesterday. So if you want to go look at that, the link will be in the description down below. But basically, just to sweeten things up, we have our Alberta Clipper that has officially moved on through into portions of the Hudson Bay. And what that has done is that has brought a lot of this Arctic air behind this. And that's the reason why you have those blizzard warnings into portions of the upper Midwest. That's because of that significant wind shear bringing all of that significant Arctic air towards this general vicinity to where the giant boundary is starting to develop along much of the United States. Now, on the other hand, we have this massive dip in the jet stream right within here. You can see how the flow of the clouds actually shift from coming from the north to going to the south, and then they actually turn eastward and shoot across much of the United States. And what's going to happen here is we have this low pressure system that's going to move on through into portions of the western United States, and that's the aforementioned low pressure that I was talking about that was going to shift on through from Wednesday into Thursday and create your severe weather in the south and your winter weather in the north. And to match things up with what we just saw, we're going to take a look at the 500 millibar wind shear, which is about 6 kilometers above ground level from the Euro model, to kind of get an idea as to what could potentially happen in the future. So remember, we have our Alberta Clipper over here that's creating some significant wind shear. We have our low pressure system that's moving on to the western portions of the United States with our significant wind shear going around that. So this is relatively accurate as to what we're seeing so far. Now, as we play this out, you can see how that low pressure system continues to deepen and move on through, and some significant amounts of wind shear can be anticipated across much of the areas to where there could potentially be some freezing rain as well as severe weather. Now, at the same time that all this is happening, we can take a look at the 850 millibar wind shear, which is about 1 kilometer above ground level, and you can see a lot of that significant wind shear bringing in a lot of the aforementioned Arctic air that's over in Canada down towards portions of where this winter weather activity is going to be. And you can actually see a bit of a boundary that develops here from the wind shear, which could indicate as to where that winter weather could potentially ride along. And right along that line is to where we should watch, as well as the developing low pressure system that's going to move on through into portions of Texas and Oklahoma. And this is going to basically create a lot of wind shear around this thing too. Look at the wind shear that comes here from the Gulf of Mexico towards portions of the deep south and the Ohio River Valley. And what this is going to do is this is going to bring a lot of moisture up into the areas of where severe weather could potentially exist on Wednesday into Thursday and all the way through into Friday. And just to hammer it home that we have significant Arctic air that's moving on through into Canada, even though it's pretty much well known that it's very cold up there, you can see our actual temperatures here on the right side, and then our anomaly temperatures here on the left side, which basically indicates as to what is above and what is below average temperatures. And you can see our very cold air here indicated on the left side as below average temperatures within our greens and our purples, and then our very significant cold air that is in the single to below single digit temperatures over here within our actual temperatures on the right side. And you can see how this starts to really trudge on through all the way into portions of the central United States. I mean, look at this. Below average temperatures across the board into much of the United States. The only areas that actually get above average temperatures is out in front of that boundary that I mentioned from the 850 millibar wind shear. And look at this. Some significant below average temperatures and upwards of 40 degrees below average within some portions of the central to southern plains, specifically into areas of New Mexico and Texas. I mean, that is some very cold air that is surging on through for this time of. Now, on the other hand, if we take a look at the dew points here to show you why that moisture is really important for our severe weather setup and why that 850 millibar wind shear takes that moisture up, or basically just some evidence as to how that is basically going to occur. You can see how the relatively deep moisture content that is over in the Gulf of Mexico, which is about 60 degrees with your dew points starts to rise further and further north, and you can see those yellows expand further and further into portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and this is where your severe weather could exist. You can see this massive cold front here that pushes on through, almost basically a dry line at this point, and that is where your severe weather setup is basically going to be. The dew points are significant enough for severe weather to exist. And a good way for us to determine as to how much energy there is in the atmosphere for severe weather to either form or sustain is by taking a look at the convective available potential energy. And we want about 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram of CAPE in order for us to get it. And we do have that. We have about 1,500 joules per kilogram that does exist across portions of Louisiana and Mississippi, and that'll continue to push on through into portions of Alabama as well. So severe weather could more than likely exist within some of these areas, and that could include the threat for tornadoes. Now, on top of all of that severe weather, you could also potentially see some flash flooding. You can see a lot of these areas in the red and even dark reds of browns and stuff like that. That is where your total amounts of precipitation could get in upwards of 4 to 6 inches of rain, and especially since all this is going to be happening within a short time period, flash flooding is definitely going to be possible. So if you are in a flood prone area, I would highly recommend watching out and getting to higher ground. There's a saying that we all say when the times get tough here with flooding. It's turn around, don't drown. Don't drive into flooded roadways, because the actual flooded areas could appear a lot shallower than they actually are. So definitely something to where if you guys live within this general vicinity, you need to watch out for the potential flash flooding that could be possible. So now I'm going to try and kill two birds with one stone here, and I'm going to try and go through the timings of all this event through all the areas that are going to be impacted. So once again, if you want to take a look at the time, it is above me in Eastern, and if you're in Central, you're just going to have to subtract 1 hour. So let's go ahead and play this on through here from Tuesday night into Wednesday. You can see the snow really start to expand here across portions of central to eastern portions of Kansas, as well as northern portions of Missouri and western to central portions of Illinois. That'll continue to linger, and not only linger, but expand as we head in towards the early morning hours of Wednesday, towards the afternoon hours of Wednesday, to where you can get some significant amounts of snow in some of these areas. Visibility will more than likely be almost zero within some areas of central Illinois as this pushes on through, as well as even to portions of central Missouri as well. So just something to watch out for with that, and even towards portions of Springfield heading off towards St. Louis. You guys are more than likely going to get some freezing rain within your general vicinity as this moves on through. So if you are a morning commute type person, you need to really watch out for some very hazardous travel that's going to move on through within this time frame. And this is expected to continue to move on through. You might get a little bit of a break here on Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday evening for portions of eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, eastern Kansas, as well as much of Missouri, to where precipitation amounts may not be as significant within that time frame, but then it starts to flick a switch here as you start to go from Wednesday afternoon into Wednesday evening here. Look at this from the evening to the overnight hours, heading off into the early morning hours of Thursday. You can see how significant some of the sleet and freezing rain totals could potentially be, or at least the amounts within a certain time period. We have some very deep colors within this general vicinity, and that could indicate some very significant weather, that will not only be apparent, but will continue to linger on through all the way until it starts to move out through your general vicinity on Friday. But at the same time all of that is happening, on Thursday afternoon, you can clearly see your cold front that continues to exist here, and this is when your severe weather threat can officially start. I would say the early afternoon into the late evening hours is your time period to which your severe weather threat could be the most significant. Areas of central to eastern portions of Louisiana, central to southern portions of Mississippi, and extreme western portions of Alabama, you guys need to watch out for the potential for severe weather. Tornadoes could exist within this threat, guys, and you really need to watch out for how this thing continues to push on through. Now, I want to show you guys where that freezing line could potentially be, to where the determining edge of freezing rain, and snow could potentially reside. And we're going to take a look at the different levels of the atmosphere, starting with the 700 millibar temperature, you can see that areas from this white and north, that is where your freezing line is. All right, anywhere north of that, that is where it is relatively cold, and the precipitation that is forming in the sky starts out as snow, and then areas south of that black line, that is where the precipitation in the sky is forming as rain. Now, as we translate this from the 700 millibar level, which is about 3 kilometers above ground level, to the 850 millibar level, which is about 1 kilometer above ground level, you can see how that freezing line recedes a lot further north here, and areas in between that black line and yellow line go from snow to rain as it falls through that level of the atmosphere. But let's transition here from the 850 millibar level to the surface level, and you can see that the freezing temperatures at the surface actually do recede a lot further down to the south again, and areas that are in between this yellow line and this blue line could more than likely get some significant amounts of freezing rain, and that includes portions of Dallas, Fort Worth, all the way up to Little Rock, Memphis, Jonesboro, all the way up to Paducah. You guys need to watch out for some significant amounts of freezing rain that is possible, especially if you're up towards the Mississippi River. If you're towards the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you could get some freezing rain, but it's definitely not going to be as significant as the areas over that I mentioned. So what about the total amount of freezing precipitation and even snow? Well, we're going to take a look here, and you can see the tale of two models. We have the NAM model, which is on the left, and then the Euro model, which is on the right. And you can see there is a bit of similarities here. You can see the boundary of the freezing rain does look very similar to what the Euro says, but the Euro actually takes its freezing rain a lot further to the north and expands it as well. So the amounts of freezing rain is similar. As a matter of fact, the NAM actually says there's a lot more significant freezing rain over here, with there being almost and upwards of 2 inches of freezing rain. I mean, that in itself is significant. I mean, you only need about a half inch of freezing rain for you to have significant problems. And if you can imagine what 3 to 4 times the amount of that actually could do, then you have a significant ice storm on your hands. But regardless, places near Dallas-Fort Worth could get about a half inch of freezing rain possible. Maybe a little bit further north of that, that is where the majority of the freezing rain could actually be, near the Red River areas of the Oklahoma and Texas border. But Dallas-Fort Worth, you definitely need to watch out. Places near Austin and Waco, you need to watch out as well as portions. Definitely, I mean, in portions of central Arkansas heading off towards eastern Arkansas. You guys really need to watch out. And the area that you guys really need to watch out for the most, as I said, Memphis all the way up to Paducah and further off towards Louisville, you guys can get some significant amounts of freezing rain and even snow possible within your general vicinity. Now, what about the snow totals? Well, there definitely could be some snow within some of the areas that we mentioned earlier yesterday. We were talking about how that low pressure system could potentially sling that moisture around, and on the backside of it, there could be some residual moisture to create some wintry precipitation. And indeed, the Euro and the NAM do seem to have that favoritism now compared to what it was yesterday, to where there wasn't really a whole lot. So areas over here in northern and western portions of Texas, you guys could get about 1 to 3 inches of snow, with some isolated amounts of 5 to 8 inches of snow being possible from Wichita Falls all the way up into portions of eastern Oklahoma. Now, that is going to be relatively isolated as well, all right? I would not say that the widespread area could potentially get 5 to 8 inches of snow. I say a good baseline here for the most part is about 3 to 5 inches of snow, especially if you live over into portions of Oklahoma. But then as you translate over further towards the north and east, you can see that areas over here in Missouri and Illinois, they start to really get some significant amounts of snow, with at minimum a foot of snow, and at maximum, I'd say about 1.5 to 2 feet of snow is definitely possible. So now let's flip the script. What about people over here in Ohio? What about Kentucky, Tennessee? What about West Virginia, Pennsylvania, my home state? What about those areas? What about the Northeast? What about southern New Jersey? Some of my friends over there in the comments said hello from southern New Jersey. Hello, hello. Shout out to you all. What about you guys? Well, let's take a look at the NAM here, and you can see the band of snow starts to surge on through further and further to the east, and by Wednesday afternoon to Wednesday evening, areas of Illinois, Ohio, and portions of Michigan, as well as southern Ontario, could potentially start to get some snow from that massive boundary that moves on through, and that'll continue to linger all the way through into portions of Thursday. Portions of Buffalo could actually get into the activity, and then this is when things really start to become significant. Look at the amount of freezing rain and sleet that is possible across portions of areas near Cincinnati, Toledo, Columbus, as well as into portions of, once again, the Louisville areas, Indianapolis. You guys could potentially get some significant amounts of wintry precipitation as well. So that is the big thing here to watch out for. Now, as this moves on through, it does seem that there will be some significant amounts of snow that could be possible for a short time period. I'd say about 12 to 18 hours towards areas near Toronto, Buffalo, even areas of Erie, maybe even further off towards the Binghamton and Albany areas. But then you can also see how this sharp edge here, the sharp line of cutoff, actually is just really small here. You can see how even as we go further off into Friday, there isn't really a lot of room for freezing rain and sleet to actually exist across portions of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast as well. So let's do the same thing to where we take a look at all the different levels of the atmosphere and their temperatures and see what type of precipitation could specific areas get. And we're going to take a look at the overnight hours of Thursday into Friday just as a baseline here, and you can see how our freezing line exists over here from the white areas and north. That is where your frozen precipitation can start off as snow, and areas south of that, that is where it could start off as rain. But then if we shift from the 700 millibar level to the 850 millibar level, you can actually see how those temperatures recede a lot further off towards the north and west, and that is where areas that are in between the black line and the blue line, that is where you can see your snow start to thaw out into rain as it falls through that level. But then if we shift over towards the surface temperatures, I mean, this kind of just explains itself. You can see how the temperature line actually recedes a lot further south than even the black line in some areas, and that is where some freezing rain could potentially exist. Anywhere in between the yellow line and the blue line, that is where you guys are almost guaranteed some wintry precipitation, whether it's freezing rain, sleet, or snow. That is still to be determined in some areas, but I would say start preparing if you are north of that yellow line. So let's go back to the totals here of our freezing rain. You can see the NAM on the left and the Euro on the right. You can see a massive band of freezing rain that starts to march on through, even towards portions south of Columbus, heading off towards portions of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh could actually get about a half inch of freezing rain, and that could even include portions of State College in central Pennsylvania as that moves on through. But the Euro, however, you can see how widespread this actually is, even into portions of Charleston, West Virginia, as well as Lexington, Kentucky. They can actually get some of that activity as well. Now, I want to draw light to something here real quickly. If you guys remember the December 10th tornado outbreak and how we had that significant tornado that went on through from Arkansas all the way through into Kentucky with that quad state supercell, well, right over those same exact areas, you can see some significant amounts of freezing rain. So I know that they are definitely not done with some sort of recovery effort over there or just rebuilding in general, and they're not going to get a whole lot of relief here from Mother Nature as this moves on through. So pray for them if you guys can. And on the opposite side of the coin here, you can see our snow totals here, and I would say a pretty consistent basis here would be where that line that I drew was yesterday in my last video. You guys remember how I cut the GFS basically in half, and the Euro basically is supporting that thesis as well. So I would watch out for some snow totals here, especially if you're in portions of northern Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and portions of the northern Appalachians, especially as you get towards Vermont, New Hampshire, and New England, to where you guys could get about a foot of snow, especially even higher than that in some of the higher elevations. So watch out for that. If you're into portions of northern Indiana, southern Michigan, and northwestern portions of Ohio, you guys are going to be more than likely in the center of all of this significant snow, as well as into portions of central Illinois. You guys can get some activity here according to the Euro, whereas the NAM is pretty consistent across the board. That areas here, as long as you're in this giant band of snow, you guys are probably going to get some significant amounts of snow and upwards of a foot on top of the potential freezing rain that is possible. So I hope you guys understood as to why the storm could potentially be as significant as it is, and that's the reason why I was asking you guys to share this information with as many people as possible, because this storm will impact millions of people. So As I said, if you guys could, please share this with as many people as possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also follow me on social media, and the question of the day, the give it to me straight question of the day, is something that I forgot to edit out yesterday, but it's a little bit of a sneak peek. How many times, all right, if you guys can guess, how many times I said the word area or areas, whether it's the singular or plural version of the word, I will pin you in the comments down below. Thank you guys, as I said, and I will see you guys in the next video that I will upload on Wednesday afternoon to Wednesday evening. It will most likely be around sometime along the hours of 7 to 9 Eastern, so 6 to 8 Central, right around that time frame. I will see you guys then, so peace out.